I usually introduce my guest at this point in the show, but after experimenting with 2 episodes where I talk directly with you, I've had this unquenchable urge to try it again. And the reason is, from your emails to your Facebook posts to your comments on my YouTube channel and to meeting some of you on the streets and stores and restaurants, I began to realize that my viewers have as deep of insights as many of my most famous and iconic guests. Now, although I cannot have a direct discussion with you, I am convinced that by sharing certain thoughts, topics, emotions, and everything else under the sun and maybe beyond it, and then hearing back from you, together we will develop a one-on-one relationship that benefits us in unimaginable ways. For it is my firm belief that together we can develop a deeper understanding of our world and a greater appreciation for our role in it. And that, I'm certain, is a recipe for wisdom. Today's episode, as I mentioned in the opening, is about how together we can quest for wisdom. And I thought the best place to start was with our most primal of instincts. And we know what that is. It's the first thing we ever had to deal with: fear. Now, if we did not possess this instinct from our first humanoid step, we would have provided a mighty fine dinner for someone in the animal kingdom. But as we evolved, so have our fears. And no matter how much further we evolve, our fears, like Mary's little lamb, will sure to follow. In fact, if we try to eliminate our fears, not only is it an exercise in futility, but in the long run, trust me, it will do us much more harm than good. Yet fear, it's also the greatest obstacle. It keeps us paralyzed from action, while on the other hand, it's our greatest motivator. It's one of the things we can use to improve our lot in life if we take it seriously and sort of take away the fear and think of it more as curiosity. However, both of us, you and I, we don't want to live in that state of fear. Because when fear dominates our thoughts to such an extent that they paralyze actions, we need to do a few things. We either need to break them, go through them, go around them, go over them, or under them. Because for the most part, we no longer have to fear that lion eating us anymore. However, the type of our more modern day fear, the one that we usually experience, is what we now call anxiety. And the past guest on my show, Robert Maurer, literally wrote the book on it. And the twist brings anxiety out of the closet. His book, Mastering Fear, in it, he writes these words, and I want to share them with you. Many of us use words like stress, anxiety, depression, or nerves to describe a strong, persistent feeling of upset in our bodies. However, I have been intrigued by how rarely highly successful people use these words. They all used the word fear. Now, Robert assures us that stress is fear trapped in a society that has an unhealthy relationship with fear. So how do we develop a healthier relationship with it? Remember this: if I had the answers, I would not need to be discussing this with you and looking for your feedback. Plus, if I had the answers, I'd be rich enough not even to have to talk to you at all. But, as I said in the beginning, I really believe that if we're in this together, we can figure these things out. So I'm going to share some of my stuff, my baggage, the stuff that I drag around. You'll share some of yours, and remember, It's all for the quest, and that quest is for wisdom. Now, first, I'm going to make my own confession. It is easier for me to let things go, including fear, than it ever was when I was a younger man. Part of it is due to all I did read and learn from my show, my guests, my viewers, my life. After all, we know this for a fact, that repetition plus time can be a really great teacher. But I felt that there was something else working for me as well. In fact, peace and calm became the dominant way I started living my life. Okay. That last statement is a bit of a stretch. In fact, it's only partly true, and only and partially are being used very kindly here. Yes, I am now more motivated by my own anxiety, but peace and calm will never be what I or anyone who knows me will be used to describe the type of person I am. So although new and improved, I could not stop the anxiety and realized, like fear, it's not even a good idea to try and stop it. But like being afraid, I was damned if I would let the anxiety stop me. Now, a while back, I had a Dr. David Schechter on my show, and he said these words from his book, Think Away Your Pain. Find them in a second. Here they are. Changing the fear response to one of I understand and I am in control response is one way of going about it. I feel soothed already, don't you? Now, all kidding aside, it really does help if we can treat ourselves with a kinder, gentler outlook. It's just that it's never, ever, ever the first thing to enter my mind. First, this is how my mind works. Comes anger at myself. Then, realizing I should know better. Of course, what that does brings on more anger because I feel stupid for not doing anything and knowing better. And then it's followed by a lovely little dose of self-loathing. For how could someone who knows better not do anything about it, then get angrier for being an idiot? Now, don't you just love fear, anxiety, and self-loathing? As I think of it, it's the gift that keeps on giving. But maybe, just maybe, we can work around it. Now, there is no one answer that will fit each and every one of us when it comes to dealing with our fears. In fact, there's no one way of ever dealing with anything. We all have to go through so much before we can even begin to grasp the most complex of emotions. And real-life issues we face on a daily basis doesn't help. It doesn't make it any easier because it just adds to it. However, there are some tricks we can do to help us fake it, as they say, until we can make it. But what if the real essence of faking something is not make-believe, but something we can actually do temporarily to fix a situation? In fact, even those who have achieved the greatest of success, however we define success, had to do something called jerry-rigging along the way. To jerry-rig is to make a temporary repair with only the tools and materials that happen to be on hand. Personally, this is where I do shine, for I am an accomplished jerry-rigger. With enough duct tape, Velcro, a screwdriver, and a hammer, I can hold together things just long enough. Now, I'll give you an opposite example. My son's father-in-law is around, and when he is, he's really truly one of the great men I know. he's also an excellent contractor and mechanic. He can quickly whip out the right tools for whatever needs fixing and permanently take care of the problem. I am not so blessed with the knowledge, nor for that matter, the tools. But I've also learned that I'm not alone. What many of the great thinkers, innovators, scientists, adventurers, and even athletes do in order to keep moving forward without discouragement is also having the ability to jerry-rig the situation. Oftentimes what they call it is a workaround. Now, I was familiar with the term workaround, but I never really fully appreciated it until I was invited to a Silicon Valley workshop to do some interviews a while back. Quite a few of the really successful Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, they use the term workaround in a number of conversations. And I finally began to ask them, what did they really mean? And I got a rather surprising answer. It seems that in the world of computer science, mathematics, physics, and all sorts of other arenas, from rocket science to you name it, is a term for a plan or method used to circumvent a problem temporarily without eliminating it. They use the term workaround. I was using jerry-rig. Same difference. In fact, I couldn't get over this concept known as the workaround. I knew the jerry-rig concept, but I wanted to do some more research into the thought about the working around and found out that throughout the centuries, and I mean going way back, our greatest thinkers, from Galileo to Newton to Einstein, our greatest leaders, from Washington to Lincoln to Churchill, and inventors, from Edison to Bell to Steve Jobs, would often be stumped on a problem, but knew they had to get around it somehow, even temporarily, in order to finally find the proper solution to the immediate issue they faced. And this goes back again to me thinking of fear and how we just may have to jerry-rig ourselves around it sometimes. As I mentioned, classic examples in my life usually involve duct tape. But then again, it also saved the Apollo 13 mission, if you remember, from Ron Howard's movie. In fact, I'm certain Ron Howard is in love with those who can jerry-rig around a problem, because directing the film Apollo 13, afterwards he was on my show with the most recent of his films, In the Heart of the Sea. And one of the first things we talked about, how much jerry-rigging went around in that film. Workarounds where it was required when it comes to survival. In fact, the actual term originated from the nautical jargon. Sailors had to use whatever was in hand to replace a mast, which holds the ship's rigging. In other words, jerry-rigging. Now, of course, in my ideal, calm and peaceful self, in an ideal world, you would see the problem beforehand, find the perfect solution, and never need a workaround. I would love to bask in such a place, but I've begun to realize I even have to jerry-rig my workarounds just to get through even the most mundane of days. Now, the key purpose of my workarounds, besides repairs around the home, is for me to get around the roadblocks on the path to my own self-awareness, consciousness, and happiness. However, after all the reading and meeting of the great minds I've encountered, some of their best advice might actually be a part of the roadblocks we need to get around. I know it is always with their best intention in mind, and I kind of think that if I really could follow all the best advice given, both of us, you and I, might actually see the light. But that never seems to be what happens in my case. Whenever I know something is good for me and cannot seem to do it, I find a workaround that does not provide the perfect fix. But sometimes good enough is really just that, good enough. When I ask people, how's it going? And they respond, great. My first inclination is I want to punch them in the face. But then a pattern started to develop. I began to notice something unusual, that rather than wanting to punch them, I literally wanted to hug them. And I wanted to tell them, I know it's great, that's okay, soon things will get better, I'm sure. The reason this change happened was that I began to realize something, at least in the circle of friends I had. All the people who responded that things were great were in some way some of the saddest people I knew, and I actually really did like them. Two of them in particular, and this even to me seems sort of like a coincidence, but it's really the case that made me think about this. Both were very morbidly obese. They were both in the worst marriages you could imagine. One of them had the worst job you could think of, and the other has been unemployed for years. Obviously, feeling great may not be all it's cracked up to be, or at least saying it is not. Now, I know that in both of these cases, they were people doing their best they could to be cheery in such a depressed state. But there is more that I feel in my heart is going on here. When I am asked how I feel, my response at best is good. And if I'm a bit down, okay. And hanging in there is what I answer if I'm less than okay. I never go in the other direction and say bad, because I'm going to level with you. Things really rarely are bad, just as they rarely really are great. In fact, I respond okay and people say to me, just okay, my clever retort is, yes, in today's time, okay is the new great. Now, another guest I had on my show, Dr. Michael Diamond, in our conversation about his book, My Father Before Me, he talks about the term I started with, good enough, as a most positive value, especially when it comes to parenting. I'm going to read a little chapter from his book, My Father Before Me. He believes that attending soccer games or schools play an important part, but what is most important is being involved in your children's internal lives. And he says, the goal is never to be a perfect parent. The goal is actually to be a good enough parent so your child can thrive. And I want to quote his exact words. To accomplish this, fathers must value and attend to their own internal lives. Fathers willing to face themselves in these ways are on the route of being good enough. Helping a child experience loss, frustration, and disappointment in ways that promote and enhance rather than inhibit growth. So in our goal to strive for perfection, we may do ourselves and our loved ones, not to mention our coworkers and society in general, more harm than good. Because becoming the best you are capable of becoming is what matters. And if good enough is one of the highest goals in the most important jobs of our lives, parenting, well, that is good enough for me. Actually, good enough is really all I can claim when it comes to almost anything. So what about the rest of the issues we deal with in our quest for wisdom? For now, let's leave good enough alone, at least until the next segment. So how are we going to do this together? My thought is thousands of heads are better than one. As I stated in my introduction, in order for this experiment to work, we have to form a two-way conversation. I need to know your thoughts on the issues you're dealing with and how the topics of fear, jerry-rigging or working around, and being good enough sits with you. Now, in the very near future, we can try certain programs and apps, I'm sure, that really will allow us to have some form of a two-way conversation. I just haven't figured that out yet. And again, maybe someone watching has. So please, part of my plan is to incorporate that. So my plan, in order for it to work, if it does, and if it even can, is to have you reach out to me personally. Now, I know that if I was some really major celebrity, my email box would be too full to respond and try this experiment. In fact, don't you just love it when some personality says, I may not be able to respond to all your emails, but I promise I will read them. Well, here's the truth. Someday, I would relish to be in such a situation. And maybe if this little experiment works, that can be the last time I say these words. I will not only read every email, but I will personally respond to every single one, no matter how long it takes. In fact, some of you may not even like to use email. You may be more comfortable with connecting on Facebook, or for that matter, when this episode is posted on my YouTube channel, you may like to just comment, question, or add to the conversation that goes on between the viewers who watch me on YouTube. In any and every case, however you wish to reach out to me, I am promising I will respond. It's the only way we can make this thing work. And if for some reason somebody gets passed by, just mail me again, just contact me on Facebook, tweet me, do whatever. Oh, I forgot all about Twitter, of course. Tweet me if you want. I don't care, however it is. So I'm going to actually give you the information. To email me directly, you may do so at barry@barrykibrick.com. I thought I was very creative when I came up with that address. You can either friend me on Facebook or visit and follow my Facebook page at Barry Kibrick, and I'll respond to all posts and or messages. And I want you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel, especially when this episode is online, because there you can actually respond to the show and join in with the other viewers in a real conversation, almost in real time, and directly see what you feel about this experiment. So for the next time we try this, I also promise to use your responses to create our next conversation. But I promise never to reveal any identities. So, again, here's the information. Drop me an email at barrykibrick.com. And again, that's my name, barry@barrykibrick.com. Hit me up on Facebook or my YouTube channel. And please feel free to recommend even easier ways for us to communicate. And again, at least for this first time, I will respond to everyone. So like I do when I have a guest on my show, I'd like to leave you with these few more words from the futurist Arthur C. Clarke. He said this: to accomplish the limits, the possible can only be defined by going beyond them into the impossible. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between the limits of the possible and the impossible is what we will continue to strive for. But until we get there, we may just have to do a little jerry-rigging. So keep the duct tape handy. See you next time.
To connect with Barry, like him on Facebook and follow him on Twitter at Barry Kibrick. And to contact Barry directly, view past episodes of Between the Lines, and read his weekly blog, visit us at barrykibrick.com. Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible in part by Sam Ash Music, a proud sponsor of Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick. Sam Ash has been serving musicians since 1924. To unlock your inner musician, information is available at samash.com.